Well, next up is the other scandal, the biggest scandal in American history, which is the spying on President Trump and the continued efforts to overturn the results of the election through harassment, illegal activity, and abuse of President Trump and people around him. And that was the circus of the Mueller hearing this week. And I'm glad I've had a few days to think about this before I talk to you, because you watch something and you have an immediate impression, and then there's a considered impression. And sometimes your immediate impression holds up after a few days of consideration. But my impression was, and I was warning folks on this, is that it did not matter how well Mueller performed. It was part of a play. It was part of a scheme by the Democrats to bring Mueller in to trigger and to keep the momentum going on efforts to remove the president from office. Now, I know there's been debates about whether Mueller was all there or not, and whether he was competent enough even to testify, or competent in retrospect to even run an investigation. And I think those are fair questions given his demeanor. But I think you can have it both ways. I think you can suggest that he was not on top of his game mentally because of age or other impairments, but also hold him accountable because it seemed to me he knew what he was doing, because he studiously avoided testifying on the key scandal that he's involved in, or the key scandal behind the whole Trump effort, the Get Trump effort, which is the manufacturing of false allegations against then candidate Trump and continuing against then President Trump, that he was a spy and that he was a traitor. It was made up, and it was made up with the help, according to Hillary's people, with Russia intelligence sources. That's the dossier. Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, and the Obama FBI. And now, because of Judicial Watch's efforts, we know the State Department under Obama was involved in it too directly, concocted this dossier that included the help of, quote, Russia intelligence sources, saying that Trump was in some sort of conspiracy with the Russians. Treachery, they were accusing President Trump of. And it was all made up. So sure enough, Mueller was asked about it, and he said, outside my purview. I tell you what, it's in Judicial Watch's purview. And I hope it's in Attorney General Barr's purview and his colleague, Mr. Durham in Connecticut, the U.S. attorney who's looking at this. But isn't that convenient? That, to me, is a man who knows exactly what he's doing, because he is, by avoiding discussing the corrupt core of his investigation. Remember, no dossier, no Mueller special counsel, no FISA-gate warrants, no impeachment scheme against President Trump, no coup cabal. It all depended on that dossier fakery. It was used to justify spying on a presidential candidate by numerous federal agencies. It was used to justify spying on a president. And Mueller, who used this dossier, refused to talk about it. Refused to talk about its origins, its veracity, its validity. And the Democrats, and I tell you, and of course, if any honest evaluation by fair-minded folks like me and you, of course that hearing was a disaster. Remember, the whole Mueller investigation was harassment and abuse and a fraud. It was just low-rent prosecutions of crimes that typically would never be prosecuted by a federal prosecutor, let alone a special counsel. And some of the prosecutions and indictments and plea deals were corrupt. The Michael Flynn, I'm thinking Michael Flynn more specifically. Remember those raids on Roger Stone's home and Manafort's home. And then they have a 450-page document. This is the document. This is the Mueller report. And I've read it. It didn't need to be 450 pages. Could have been 20. And why was it 450 pages? Because, boy, this document looks scary. Something bad must have happened, right? The length and the volume is designed to make you think something happened that didn't happen. But as Attorney General Barr has highlighted, and Mueller himself is forced to admit, even though he slyly tried to suggest otherwise, he walked back that testimony, there was no obstruction. They had no evidence that could sustain an obstruction charge against the President of the United States, and there was no collusion. And by no collusion, this is something they're known about a year plus. At least. It's longer than that now because this is now several months old, this story, this report. No American knowingly colluded with the Russians to interfere in our election campaigns. Oh, wait, unless you mean Hillary Clinton. But that was outside Mueller's purview, and he refused to talk about it. So this whole circus of a hearing was designed to talk about this report in a dishonest way, because the report, of course, is dishonest. So you can't, if you're promoting it, you can't help but be dishonest. It's 450 pages trying to avoid and distract from its basic conclusions of no collusion and no obstruction. And you think, oh, this was a disaster for the Democrats and they're going to... No, 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 no. They all are but admitting, as we speak, that they want to impeach the president based on this fraudulent report and the idea that he obstructed justice. He did not obstruct justice. He talked about and complained about Mueller. He fired Comey. He's the President of the United States. He's allowed to talk about and fire both Mueller and Comey. I tell you, one thing this does, this hearing does, it vindicates my approach and Judicial Watch's approach that the Mueller investigation should have never been launched and should have been shut down by the president.